I'd like to talk to you about vows. The Bible talks a lot about them. And so I'd like to start with a verse in Ecclesiastes 5. I'll actually start with 5:1. Be not hasty in your utterance, and let not your heart be quick to make a promise in God's presence. God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. So he's already starting to tell us, be very, very careful what you say, because we will be judged by every word that comes out of our mouths. It continues, for nightmares come with many cares, and a fool's utterance with many words. When you make a vow to God, delay not its fulfillment, for God has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill what you have vowed. You had better not make a vow than make a vow and not fulfill it. I have heard this for years. I used to teach about that when I taught my financial classes. It is better not to, vow, and it is better to not vow at all than to vow and not repay. So basically, don't promise a lender that I will pay a debt, and then you don't pay a debt, you file bankruptcy, or you go into collections or something. But today I'm going to focus, as you know me, more on the vow of marriage, because we can talk about finances. We think God is going to cut us so much slack. Yes, he's merciful, but we walk around going, oh, he'll understand. He'll understand. Yeah, God will understand. But that is arrogant of us to say, well, he'll cut me slack. When right here, he's saying, do not be hasty, specifically those vows you make in God's presence, which God is present everywhere. We know God is present everywhere, whether you're in a credit union or in a church. But in a church, there's a double, because you're physically in God's house. If you look at Proverbs 20, number 25 says, rashly to pledge a sacred gift is a trap for man, or to regret a vow once made. I vow that I will love you until the day I die. And yet, there comes a time when I regret that. And God is telling us that your pledge is a sacred gift. Sacred gift. We shouldn't have to put it in writing. We shouldn't have to have witnesses. But we do, because humanity is fallen and broken. But yet in here, rashly to pledge a sacred gift is a trap for man, or to regret a vow once made. Also, you had better not make a vow than make it and fulfill it. And lastly, when I go to the book of Matthew. In the book of Matthew, it is so ironic that, well, let me read it. In Matthew 5, number 33, it says, again, you have heard that it was said to your ancestors, do not take a false oath, but make good to the Lord all that you vow. Guess what verse comes just before that? In Matthew 31, it says, it was also said, whoever divorces his wife must give her a bill of divorce. But I say to you, remember, that is a very important qualifier. Jesus is saying, doesn't matter what they said. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, unless the marriage is unlawful, not meaning it was a bad marriage, meaning it was unlawful, shouldn't have taken place. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, unless the marriage is unlawful or illicit, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Then he goes right into, again, you've heard that it was said to your ancestors, do not take a false oath, but make good to the Lord all that you vow. Guys, as I've aged, I have learned just how much God's truths are the truth. We are expected to obey them. And we tend to cut ourselves so much slack. But God is saying it is better to not vow that you will be with this person for good times and bad, sickness and health, for better or for worse, and then cut when the going gets tough. I coach people's marriages for a living. I have talked to the worst of the worst. I have talked to people in abusive relationships, in which case I always say, get out of that house and get safe. but that doesn't unmarry you. You made a vow. I've seen people in tough places and difficult situations, no matter what they are, bankruptcy, pornography, addictions, alcohol, abuse. None of them unmarry you. And in addition to the fact that it doesn't unmarry you, God goes right into this subsequently and says, it is better to not make a vow than to vow and not repay. We're supposed to make good on every vow we give to the Lord. And don't you think that God understands that our marriages are going to be bad? Do you think he was clueless? Do you think he thought it would be perfect to go, oh, sucks, Christine. Yeah, you guys didn't do it. Get out of that one. Go get another one. That is not our God. Our God is firm. Our God is love. Our God is truth. Our God is unchanging. If you're perfect, why would you change? You don't need to change. So his laws don't change. Even if 1,000 years have gone by, or 4,000 years, or since he gave the 6,000, I think, since he gave the laws to Moses, they've never changed. Only our culture has changed. We so much try to gauge our rightness and our wrongness based on whether or not culture will accept it. But if that's your gauge, you're going to be pretty messed up when you have to answer to God. And look, I'm not just saying you. I point the finger this way as well. Everything I say to you, I remind myself of. Marriage is quite possibly the toughest thing anyone will have to do in their life, toughest vocation, because any other vocation, you at least have some semblance of control, self-control, decisions over your own destiny. But when you're married, you're sacrificing half of your decisions or all the decisions to someone else. You have to sacrifice your wants. Someone is rubbing off your rough edges. Someone's pointing out your flaws, and you have to fix it. And that's painful. And that's daily. And you're doing the same for your spouse. So you're living with a person who needs to get fixed while you yourself are getting fixed. And your vow, your word in front of God and man, that's why he requires the two witnesses, says, I vow that I will love you. Remember what love is? Love is patient. So I vow that I will be patient with you until the day I die. In sickness and health, rich, poor, better, worse. When you vow you will love someone at the altar, love is patient, love is kind. I vow that I will be kind to you all the days of my life. Love does not keep record of wrongs. I vow that I will not keep a record of your wrong, because remember, if you do, then you're not loving. But these weren't just words. I talked to a young lady once when she was leaving her husband, and I said to her, I was there at your wedding. I saw you vow. And she said, oh, those were just words. Just words? You'd better be careful, because according to what's written here, those words mean everything, so much so that God said it would be better that you never made that vow than if you vow and not repay. If you are not repaying that vow to stay married until the day you die, God is saying it's better that you would have never vowed in the first place. I don't know what the consequences are going to be. I know they won't be good. So I don't come here to judge you. Everyone knows all my sins are made public. But I am here to fight for your soul. I am here to help interpret for you these words in the Bible here that I once glanced past. But God stuck me with this one lately, several times. Go talk about that vow. And remember, I may be focusing on marriage, but it's the same with your finances. If you vow to someone, you will pay, or you will pay by Friday, or you will, and you don't, the Lord remembers that. It is better that you do not vow than to vow and not repay. Another Bible verse says that we will make an account of every word ever spoken, every single word. And according to my parents, with the amount of talking I do, I've got a whole lot more of them than the average bear. But in those words that I will have to make account of, there's extra weight on the ones that were made in a vow. And so I must look at God and I must ask for the grace to stand by all my promises. The ones you make in the foxhole. If you get me out of this foxhole alive, Lord, I'll dedicate my whole life to you. I'll become a nun. I'll become a priest. And then say, oh, God understood. He did, but he also said it is better that you never vow than to vow and not repay. Is it going to be tough if you repay? Yeah. But it's better. It's better to repay it because you've said it than if you don't. God will take care of you. God understood what your marriage would be like. God understood what your life would be like when you were in that foxhole. God understood what your finances would be like when you borrowed that money from someone. But he's not letting us off the hook as the world sees it letting off the hook. Yes, he's merciful, but he is also just, and he is not a liar. And if he put these words in the Bible, they're truthful. So please don't make vows. Just don't make them. That's number one. Number two, if you make them, understand the weight of a vow to God. Understand it is very, very strong. And lastly, if you do make a vow before God, don't break it. You may not do it well. You may make mistakes. But if when you die, you face God and you say, I stayed married. I know I sinned. I know I didn't want it. I know I called my spouse names and we had bad fights. But I made that vow and I hope you grant me mercy because I didn't forsake it. So, what are your thoughts on vows? What Bible verses have you seen? I hope this helps you. Hope this helps you repay your debts, emotional, spiritual, physical. God will reward you so mightily because he knows how tough it is. Doesn't give us anything to do that he isn't there to give us the grace to do, to complete it. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. I thank you for watching this informational Bacon Bit. And I'd like to remind you once again to remember to live your life sunny side up.